Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Alien Romulus. Sorry about the long gap between videos. I wanted to do stuff on movies like Inside Out 2 and Deadpool, but I just never got around to doing it, and I loved both of those movies, by the way. Anyway, if you could really quickly hit the subscribe button and give the video a like, that would be greatly appreciated. Before I dive deeply into Alien Romulus, I just wanted to say that I absolutely loved this movie. This was pretty much exactly what I wanted out of this film, and provided some of the best suspense sequences I've seen in a movie in a very long time. Overall, I would say that I love the Alien franchise as a whole, but it is very inconsistent. It ranges from movies that I adore to a few that I really dislike. The first Alien is my all-time favorite horror movie. It captures a perfect balance of science fiction, suspense, and some viscerally disturbing imagery. Aliens is an incredible sequel and one of my all-time favorite action movies. And then I don't really like Alien 3 or Resurrection. I feel like those two movies really miss the mark of what makes the first two so effective. And then the two prequel movies are a mixed bag that I mostly enjoy. I love the lore and themes that Prometheus and Alien Covenant explore, but I'm not sure how I feel about them directly explaining some mysteries about the xenomorphs. For me, it takes away a little bit of the cosmic horror of the creatures, but that's just me and I understand those who feel differently. So I was really excited for Romulus ever since I heard that Fede Alvarez was going to direct it. His Evil Dead remake is completely bonkers and honestly my favorite of that series. And then his other movie, Don't Breathe, is another solid horror film. The trailers for this movie were fantastic and promised a sort of return to form for the series back to its horror roots, and I'm glad to say that they pretty much nailed it. This movie excels with the horror and suspense while also throwing in some action elements of aliens. From a visual standpoint, Romulus is nearly flawless. This film gives us plenty of incredible practical and digital effects, and it really feels like everyone had clear passion when making this movie. Every shot of space is just stunning and honestly reminded me of how Christopher Nolan shot some of the space stuff in Interstellar. And then these stunning space shots are really contrasted with how the Romulus space station itself is shot, with a lot of tight spaces and claustrophobia. This space station is huge, but the characters are trapped in a very desperate situation, so the cinematography really emphasizes this aspect. There is one aspect of the visuals that was a bit messy, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the cinematography itself, and I'll get to this part in my spoiler section. Story-wise, I have always felt that the simplicity of the first two Alien movies make them more effective, and I think that is beautifully captured here. The first act brilliantly sets up all the characters and why they are attempting to get through this insane situation. This group of characters are stuck in a desperate and impoverished circumstance with the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, where the company is essentially abusing their existence and essentially forcing them into more labor than they were originally contracted. So they all decide to do what they thought would be a simple in-and-out job of stealing some cryo chamber equipment for a journey to a better future, and well, we obviously know what's going to happen once they get on this space station. I think this first act, while obviously slower than the rest of the movie, does a great job at endearing us to the characters and making us care about them throughout the rest of the movie. The film also especially does a good job with Kaylee Spaney's character and her android companion. I think Rain and Andy are honestly some of the best characters that the franchise has ever had, and that says a lot considering how everyone knows and loves Ripley. This first act also does a lot of interesting setups that all get satisfying payoffs throughout the rest of the movie, which makes it more of a well-rounded story. And then of course all hell breaks loose, and then the movie is completely relentless with tension and tons of phenomenal sequences for the rest of the runtime. The tension is non-stop and just keeps escalating until the very end of the movie. The facehuggers have never been scarier, and the xenomorphs have never looked better. Pretty much every set piece is memorable and has something different to them, which sets this movie apart from the previous films. I've seen some criticisms that the movie is just a greatest hits album of Alien movies, and somehow does nothing new until the finale, but I honestly couldn't disagree more. There haven't been sequences in the franchise like how the first facehugger encounter is handled, or how temperature is utilized for a certain sequence, and then the really creative and interesting use of gravity in the third act. There just hasn't been stuff like that in the previous movies. And even the first chest burster in the film is handled slightly differently with how it's visually represented. And of course, everything builds to an absurdly intense third act, Everything from when the characters reach a certain hallway until the very end is just some insanely nail-biting stuff, and it includes some genuine nightmare fuel in the finale especially. As much as I love this movie, this is a review, so I do have to give some criticisms, even though for me personally, these criticisms are somewhat minor and don't really affect me too much. My first negative, and it's my biggest negative, is that the CGI for a certain character is very obvious and rather inconsistent. There are some shots that looked amazing, and some that looked really uncanny. I wish that Alvarez and the crew could have obscured this in some way a tad bit, with maybe some shadows, or have the lighting on the character be a bit darker to make the CG a little less off-putting. Of course, I'm not a filmmaker myself, so I wouldn't say that taking advice from me is the best idea. My second negative is a very minor one. There is plenty of Alien fan service throughout this movie and a few line callbacks, and honestly most of these specific line callbacks worked for me, except for one which felt quite awkward, and I'll get into it in the spoiler section. And my last negative was originally my biggest negative on my first viewing, but I definitely felt better about it on my second. The third act of this film is pretty incredible and takes a huge swing with the finale. The design of what is used in the finale isn't my favorite thing. It definitely has a lot of nightmare fuel aspects to it, and I've thought about it a lot since I've seen the movie, but it's not a design I'm overly keen on. And that is pretty much all of my criticisms of this movie without spoilers. But I do want to talk about some stuff in a little bit more depth, so I'm going to go into some spoilers. If you haven't seen this film, I would recommend skipping to the timestamp on screen for when I'm done talking about the spoilers. So, when I'm talking about the awkward CGI on one character, this character is an android model sharing the same face of Ian Holmes' Ash from the first Alien movie. I honestly really liked the idea of this. It sets the audience on edge because we know that Ash was a bad guy, and this new model, who is named Rook, is going to have motivations that don't benefit the characters that we've come to care about. And I also don't have a problem with them using a digitally recreated Ian Holm, since he has since passed away. And from what I gather, the crew has gotten the blessing of his family, and got a very good voice actor for the voice. My issue here is that the CG takes me out of the movie a bit. For a movie that looks so brilliant with its practical and digital effects, this is very obviously CGI throughout many of his scenes. Some of the shots looked incredible, some of the more still shots looked fantastic, but some of the shots where his face and head is moving a lot looked very awkward, especially with the teeth. And as far as my second issue of an awkward line callback, it's Andy killing a xenomorph defending Rain, and then awkwardly saying Ripley's iconic line,
"Get away from her, you bitch!"
It's a bit awkwardly said and strange, especially because it hasn't even happened in the timeline yet, because Aliens takes place about 30 years after this one. And my final issue was the design of the hybrid offspring in the finale of the movie. This thing is genuinely nightmarish and creepy, and I did appreciate it more a lot on my second viewing, but I just wish that the design was a little more xenomorph-like than human-like. It does create for an insanely fantastic sequence, but I would be lying if I said that the design didn't take me out of the movie on my first viewing. With pretty much all of my negatives done with the spoilers, I'm going to go back to what I really loved with this movie in full spoiler detail. Good God, that anti-gravity and elevator sequence was god tier. This was the scene that combined some of the action elements of James Cameron's film and has stuck with me the most. It brings in so many of the setups and pays them off as well. Andy is established as an android that was reprogrammed to do what's best for Rain from her dad, and so naturally he is programmed with some crappy dad jokes. The movie also sets up the anti-gravity functions and gravity purges of the space station, so then this sequence pays off both of them in a very smart way by having Andy remind Rain of gravity through the use of one of his bad dad jokes right when they are about to accept the fact that they are going to die. I found this story-wise to be such a satisfying moment, and then it creates for an intensely nail-biting sequence throughout the rest of this hallway of xenomorph nests, and then through the elevator. It's just a top-tier alien sequence. And for as much as I'm mixed on the design of the alien hybrid in the finale, that scene is just fantastic. The first shot of it is one of the best moments of the movie. It takes away all of the music and shows the creature in shadows as it approaches Andy and Kay. Gave me chills both time I saw the movie. This creature is also another payoff to another setup that also surprisingly ties in with Prometheus. Kay is badly injured and pregnant, so she injects the black goo substance, which she was set up to believe would heal her. The movie sets up Kay's pregnancy early on, and it also sets up the destructive effects that the black goo brings to life, with a blink and you'll miss it shot of a video with the rat being injected with it. I really love that this film doesn't ignore the existence of Prometheus. It could have easily done that and been great anyway, but I greatly appreciate the tie-in. I also love how this film connects to the original Alien, aside from the Ash model robot. The company actually found the alien that destroyed the crew of the Nostromo, and this xenomorph is the reason why the Romulus station has all the facehuggers and is in the derelict condition that it's in, which allows the story to unfold the way that it does. These things make an otherwise unconnected film into a film that really feels important in the grand scheme of the universe. And speaking of connecting to the universe, this film also feels right at home and thematically connected to the first two movies, through its commentaries on corporations' obligations to the bottom line and their general disregard of human life. And I'll give full credit to Sean Chandler's spoiler review of this movie for this next point, because I hadn't noticed it on my first viewing, but I actively paid attention to it on my second, and I think that it adds a lot to the story. Adding to the thematic continuation of the corporation commentary, this movie also adds in a bit of commentary on how desperate situations will lead people to desperate measures. It sort of explores the plight of the impoverished, if you will. The situations of people like Rain allow big corporations like Weyland-Yutani to abuse their rights as people and essentially enslave them into labor and completely disregard their humanity. I think these things really add a lot of interesting flavor to the motivations of the characters and to the overall narrative, which makes the movie have something to genuinely say about society while also being an awesomely entertaining horror movie. With all that said, the spoiler section is over. Welcome back, people who skipped to the timestamp. I hope you're having a great day. Alien Romulus is a movie that I had a lot more to talk about than I originally realized. I really loved this movie, and it's easily my favorite Alien film since James Cameron's movie from 1986. It really is a throwback to those first two movies, combining the horror and constant tension of the first Alien with a few of the action beats of the second, while also adding in some new spins on the series, which makes it feel fresh. I hope this movie does well at the box office, and I would love to see Fede Alvarez do another movie in this franchise. I feel like he's a perfect choice for these types of movies. But considering the Alien series release schedules are about as consistent as my motivation to upload videos, who knows when the next Alien movie will come out at this point. This movie seems to be mostly loved by people from what I've gathered. Certain aspects will definitely divide some people, and I think that's fine. As my concluding remarks, I highly recommend seeing this movie on the biggest screen possible. It really shines in IMAX. Your eyes and ears will thank you later. And remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate anyone who stuck around to the end of this incoherent ramble of a video. Okay, bye.
If it is to be said, so it is.